Welcome, everybody. We're slowly letting everybody into the room. And I want to say hello and welcome. I'm Jennifer Chrysler, and I'm the Chief Advancement Officer here at Hampshire College. And as you can see by my Zoom box tab, my pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I'm really pleased to welcome you all here today to what I know is going to be a really great conversation on a really important topic. We recently merged two departments together, CORC, which is our Career Options Resource Center, and the Advancement Team, which does fundraising and alumni relations and marketing and communications. And I think that's because we know and really understand the power of what happens when we bring students and alums and faculty and staff and parents all together to really think about and talk about how do we advance the Hampshire network and ensure that we have really great connections between all of those communities of Hampshire people. So today's event really represents the best of what I think we can do now that we've combined all those forces. I want to take a minute to just acknowledge that this event has been made possible by the Spark Fund, which is really about supporting connections between Hampshire alums and students for personal and professional growth. And I want to take a minute to thank one of our partners on campus, the Community Commons, also known as COCO, who really did a lot of work to help us spread the word with our students. So this is a really exciting time at Hampshire as we are celebrating our 50th anniversary. And we've taken the time, I think, to really reflect on the profound impact that Hampsters have had in the world. Like, what have our alums gone out and done? And we're really optimistically looking forward to the next 50 years. I think one of the things that's so great about Hampshire is that students learn to really explore their passions, to ask important questions, to bring together people to build community in support of a vision. And today's panelists are really exemplars in their fields who live their values and pursue their passions. And they're really using all those amazing muscles that they gained at Hampshire to make a difference in the world. So I'm only here to do a brief welcome and to tell you how glad we are that all of you are here with us and to thank everybody who's been a part of making this happen. But I think I want to leave you with a quote from our president, Ed Wingenbach, that I think really captures Hampshire and what we are about so beautifully. And if you've had the chance to hear him, you'll know that he is such an impassioned advocate for our college. And he says, there are thousands of colleges and universities in the United States, but only one is entirely unconstrained by the assumptions of the past. Only one has as its goal to invent the future of the liberal arts. And only one has as its mission the transformation of all the others. That's what we aspire to do at Hampshire. So I'm so glad that you're here with us to be a part of that mission. And I'm really excited about what today is going to bring. So now I'm going to turn the Zoom over to Joan Wattman, who will read our land acknowledgement.
Hi, everyone. Thank you again for joining us here today. We want to begin by naming that we are on unceded Pecumtuck land. We understand that naming this is not enough. We're doing this as a way of acknowledging and reminding ourselves about the land we occupy. And we know this act alone does not repair the damage done by colonialism. We want to acknowledge the Pecumtuck people, the original inhabitants of the land where we live and work, and the land that Hampshire College is on. This land spans from what is currently known as Hampden and Hampshire counties into Connecticut and southern Vermont. While there are still individuals with Pecumtuck ancestry here, the Pecumtuck people as a tribe are no longer here because of the ongoing violence at the hands of European colonialization. We also like to acknowledge the neighboring indigenous nations, the Nipmuc and the Wampanoag to the east, the Mohegan and Pequot to the south, Mohican and Nonotuck to the west, and the Abenaki to the north. To learn more about this history, I want to encourage you to read Dr. Lisa Brooks' new book called Our Beloved Kin, A New History of the King Philip's War, which sheds light on the powerful and complex history of Native resistance in this area. We know that there are people on this webinar who are joining us from around the US and throughout the world, And we want to encourage you to learn about the original peoples of the land where you are settled. A resource that can help you with this is the Native Land app. It's an Indigenous-led organization. It's native-land.ca, and we can put that in the chat as well. Before we close, we would like to leave you with a couple of questions to reflect on. What can we do individually and collectively to repair the harm done by settler colonialism? How can we build a right relationship with this land we have settled on?
With that, I'd like to introduce Julia Firestone. Julia is a fall 2006 alum and transformational leadership coach. She's been a delight to work with in planning this event and asks lots of really awesome questions. So I have no doubt she'll do an awesome job of facilitating this conversation. Julia?
Thanks so much, Karen, and thank you, Joan, also for the land acknowledgement. I am in Brooklyn, New York on Lenape and Canarsie unceded territory. And I am so pleased to be with you all today. I am really pleased to introduce our incredible panel. Just checking, is Miriam here now?
I am. I'm so sorry. Right now, I am on the phone, but I'm getting to my destination, and you will see me on speaker in just a minute.
Amazing. Okay, so we have Miriam Cremer, 87 Fall, who is a physician and founder of Basic Health International. Welcome, Miriam. And we'll see you on video shortly. We have Grusha Prasad, who is from the class of 13F, who's a PhD candidate in cognitive science at Johns Hopkins University. Welcome, Grusha. We have Wendy Webb Williams, 86F, who is a lawyer and chief legal counsel for Sara Lee. Welcome, Wendy. And we have Ananda Valenzuela from 07F, who's a nonprofit capacity builder, interim executive director for RVC. Welcome, Ananda. So I'm really pleased to be with you all today and with our incredible panelists. If you see me looking to the side, I do have some notes because I want to make sure we capture everything, just to put that out there. And I'd just like to start by welcoming all of you, our audience members, to this conversation. If you haven't done so already, because we'll be in breakout rooms later, I'd like to invite you to add your pronouns to your name. You can do that by clicking participants and edit under more to change your name. Or if you use multiple pronouns or all pronouns, feel free to ignore me. And as we start out, I want to bring our audience into the conversation. So I'd like to invite you to share in the chat, what is your greatest career fear? And if you have the chat open, if you see someone share something that resonates with you too, or that you have in the past had a fear about, go ahead and add that reaction of the heart, just to show you're not alone in this. This is a shared experience. And all fears are valid. So no judgment here. And I'm also, as you're thinking about that greatest career fear, I'm going to share a link in the chat. Here we go, multitasking. To a site called Easy Retro, where you can add your questions as we go, and it'll just make it a little bit easier rather than having Melissa chasing the chat for questions. So you can always add them there. Awesome. I don't see any career fears coming in yet. Do any of our, oh, okay. Yes, okay. Making so little money that I'm not able to sustain my life and take care of my family. Absolutely. Swept up in the day-to-day and lose sight of the big picture. Yes. Your job isn't sustainable, burning out. I can't add enough hearts quickly enough. Yeah, speaking publicly, public failure, not getting hired in my field, being presented with options that I won't be fulfilled with, that the work environment will suck my soul from my skin and leave me a fairly useless hole. Whew, I am feeling these, working in jobs I'm not passionate about because I don't feel I have the time or motivation to find something better and more fulfilling. So many hearts, heart, 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 and I see lots of them lighting up from our whole group here. So thank you, everyone. Feel free to keep sharing as we jump in. We're going to start with a few kind of broad career questions from the panelists, and then we'll open the conversation to our audience to share questions either through that easy retro board that I shared in the chat, or if you have trouble accessing that, you can just share them directly in the chat. So thank you so much for your engagement already. And then, as Karen said, after that, we'll shift into breakout rooms, and I'll cue with more information before we do that. So to get us started with our panelists, and I know we're kind of in full group, so I'll name you all again as we go. I want to invite our panelists to introduce yourself by sharing what is the positive change or impact that you most want to make and contribute to in the world. So I'll say that again. What is the positive change or impact that you most want to make and contribute to in the world? And how are you working towards that? And how did Hampshire prepare you for it? Is that clear? Okay. So I'm going to invite Grusha to start us off, and then we'll have Wendy, Ananda, and then Miriam. So I'll cue that again as we go. So Grusha, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Okay, that's a very tough question. And I was thinking, like, I hope I'm not first, but I guess I am.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. Yeah, I guess there are like a lot of things. I've been thinking about, like, what is it that I want to do in life, and, what impact do I want to have in the world? And recently I've been thinking of, I'm in this space where does anything I do matter at all? So for context, I'm studying like cognitive science, and I study how people represent language, which is cool. It's an exciting question that I'm really, I want to understand and know the answer to. But at some point I wonder, why does it matter, right? Why does it matter if how people represent languages, and like how say AI systems represent language or something? So it's like this intersection that I work in. And I think I've realized the reason like it matters is that I enjoy like inspiring ideas. So I like not only thinking about ideas, but also sort of sharing that with other people and sort of asking questions. And so as someone, so in grad school, I've been able to sort of take classes, but also teach classes. And I think teaching is what has brought me like meaning in some way, because I'm able to sort of share ideas, but also make it accessible. Because I have always not been like a math person. So my background is not in math. It's not in any of these like computational stuff. So coming into this field, I feel like I want to make it accessible, because it's not as like difficult or opaque as people who come from this background make it so. And so I think for me, my one kind of a positive change that I want to make is that if you're scared of math, or if you're scared of these computational stuff, that's fine. It's still accessible. There's still ways in which you can think about these questions. And I guess like, what is the one concrete thing you want to do? I guess I want to start by teaching a class, like a research methods class or something like that, but doing it with complete hands-on. So usually when like in a very Hampshire style, right? So not just have these concepts and learn these concepts, but you learn them by doing. So like a very hands-on approach to learning these concepts. It's not like some abstract formulae, but you actually do it through asking a research question. And so, yeah, I guess that's one way of making this accessible.
I love that. So accessibility in fields that aren't necessarily traditionally treated that way. And Grusha, how did your Hampshire education prepare you for that? I know you mentioned the style of a Hampshire class.
Right. Oh, yeah. Sorry, I forgot to answer that. So coming in, I think Hampshire, so I came to Hampshire because I was like, I don't want to pick one path. I don't know what is it that I want to do, right? I was interested in a lot of these things, and Hampshire just like let me get this background. So the only reason I'm even able to be in this computational field, even without like a computer science degree or anything like that, is because, I was able to take like these wide range of classes, pick up the skills as I went along, and sort of trust in myself to be able to learn things as and when I needed to. And I think Hampshire is like a great place to learn to do that, because it's sort of like, thrown in the deep end of the pool, and they're like, figure it out. We'll have a lifeboat ready for you if you want to, if you're drowning, we won't let you drown, but also like we'll push you in and you learn to swim eventually or something like that. So I think that has really helped me.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Thanks so much, Grusha. So Wendy, what is the positive change or impact that you most want to make and contribute to in the world? And how are you working towards that? And how did Hampshire prepare you for it? It's like a 6-part starter question.
So this is a totally complex question. And of course, it makes sense because I have two very different ideas about the answer to that question. Because when I first heard it, the first thing I thought of was, my children, and hopefully my children will be two people who move and live in the world in their own ways and fulfilling their own goals and dreams. And what really feels like making that happen is lots of money, because kids are expensive. But then when I think about it more in terms of my professional aspirations and experiences, I hope that when this is all said and done, I don't know that I necessarily want to change the world, but I want to create a space where people like me feel comfortable doing this job. It is not a field, in fact, it is one of the least diverse fields, the field of law. But I've been really lucky to have been mentored by some amazing Black women attorneys. And so I try to create that same space, primarily because, despite what you see on TV, the real crux of what lawyers do every day is solve problems. And sometimes they're big problems, and sometimes they're small problems, and sometimes they're insurmountable problems, and you're just trying to make, take a little piece of the problem. And I think that is the essence of Hampshire. Hampshire is a place where it is completely acceptable to break things and put them back together. And that's what I do every day in my job. I look at each problem as, what is the craziest way I could solve this problem? And, that is Hampshire. We don't do things the way everyone else does just because that's the way everyone else does it. We look at issues and challenges and say, what are we missing? What's the blind spot? What's the result that we could have if only we were courageous? And taking that attitude into my career has really been, a success driver for me, because it is very easy to fall back on your training and do things the standard way. And most lawyers have a very low risk profile, whereas I think I come into a low risk profile career with a much more open mind about solving things and coming up with solutions, because that's been my key training. I tell people all the time, I've got a law degree, I've got a business degree, but it's my Hampshire training that is really the most valuable tool, because it makes me think differently about problems.
I love that, Wendy. Thank you so much for sharing. It sounds like there's so much work to do within the legal field, and you are really putting a lot into making sure that is a safe place for folks of color, and specifically Black women, to thrive. And I love that your Hampshire education really brought you a different way of thinking. So thank you so much for sharing that. I'd love to invite Ananda to share what positive change or impact you want to make and contribute to in the world, and how you're doing that, and how Hampshire prepared you for this.
Yeah, thank you. I think for that first piece around change in the world, like my work is around having a multiplier effect of supporting nonprofits that are led by and serving Black, Indigenous people of color in the greater Seattle area. And for me, that's really grounded in my vision for change in the world, which is that like the complexity of the systemic injustices we face are huge, and there's no kind of single actor or single person within that system that's going to be able to affect all those changes. It's going to take an ecosystem of a lot of really amazing leaders to do that work. And very importantly, that those leaders should reflect the communities within which the work is being done, that leadership should come from within the communities as opposed to this external like white savior complex approach to solving the problems of our world. So that is kind of where I'm at in terms of my vision for change. And part of my passion and grounding from RBC is what I saw at RBC, I mean, at Hampshire, oh my gosh, it's been a long day already. So what I saw at Hampshire in my experience there was that like, I, as a student, right, as a teenager, essentially was afforded so much power to step into systems and change them. You know, as I was the director of the financial committee, right, FICOM back in the day, and I was in charge of like $250,000 with my fellow group of students, and that and other experiences, and you know, we did a lot of work around sort of challenging and changing the first year curriculum at Hampshire. You know, like there's all these layers of work we did that's not normally what you think of students doing. And I think the environment of Hampshire, where folks were encouraged and supported in stepping into their own power and affecting change, like and taught to believe that you could and should own that power that you have, kind of has drawn into my whole life of like building the power of whole cohorts and generations and iterations of leaders to do the work out there to affect change and to move our world in a better direction.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Ananda. It's so clear from your experience that Hampshire really helped you, not only you to feel able to take on power structures and be really courageous about the change you make, but also to ensure that others are getting access to that too. So thank you for sharing. And Miriam, do we have you on the phone still?
Yes, you do have me on the phone.
Okay.
I am just sitting somewhere and I will get on video as soon as I guess I'm done giving you my perspective, and then you guys will be able to see me. So
Okay.
thank you so much for that question. I guess my passion in the world has been elimination of cervical cancer. And my career is I'm an OBGYN physician, and I work clinically at the Cleveland Clinic, but I also am president and founder of a nonprofit that we work to eliminate cervical cancer globally. It's been a passion for me ever since I did a rotation when I was a medical student and saw a woman die of this preventable disease. And that was in 1997. So I've spent the last over 20 years of my life working to make sure that there's equitable access, because cervical cancer is a disease of poor women who don't have access to health. And to me, it was not okay that anybody died of a preventable disease. So that's been my life passion. And how Hampshire helped shape that. I did a study abroad, a third-year Hampshire student in Nicaragua. So that taught me Spanish. It taught me resilience and creativity in global work. But I also would say I learned to write at Hampshire. Part of my work is funded by NIH grants, which is a hard thing to do. But I love to write, and I think it's unique within the medical community. I know how to write concisely and be able to be successful in getting grant funding. So, and I credit that a lot to Hampshire, being able to think outside of the box, being forced to write and rewrite so many papers. You know, I would say very honestly, I struggled a lot. In medical school, I don't think I had the traditional background that many of my classmates did. And it was hard to be forced to memorize things and regurgitate them and be in a really hierarchical structure that's very unlike anything that I learned at Hampshire. And it was really tough, but I feel really lucky that I've fallen into a life that I feel incredibly passionate about. Being able to help women face to face, working in public health. And I guess I'll stop there.
Thanks so much, Miriam. And we'll catch you on video once you're settled there too.
I'm gonna hop off and then hop on that. So you guys will
Okay.
see me in a second. So
Go
just
for it.
wait for
And
me
I'll
in the
repeat
waiting
the
room. I'll be right
questions.
there.
Yeah, I'll repeat the questions for the next one too. But thank you so much for sharing your experience and also being honest about what Hampshire maybe didn't prepare you as well for. But the writing piece sounds like it's just so impactful for your ability to make the impact you want to in the world in fighting cervical cancer. And so, yeah, all of the writing, so much writing. Thank you so much for sharing,
So
Miriam.
much writing. Sure.
And I heard a really pretty big range of experiences from Hampshire, of skills from Hampshire that came through from each of your responses there, and both in terms of skill sets, but also in terms of what drives your passion and sense of purpose in the world. So, you know, we have a lot of students on, we have recent grads, we have alumni who have been out and working for a long time. But I would love to ask a question that actually came in before the conversation here from someone who did not share their name, but that's okay, which is, what advice would you give students or your Hampshire student self? I added that in. So maybe yourself during Div 3. What advice would you give to students or your Hampshire self starting working in Div 3, starting out in your field, or more generally just in a career? What advice would you give? So this time we'll start with Wendy.
Trust yourself. I know that seems counterintuitive because everybody thinks Hampshire students have it all together and know what they're doing, but those of us who are Hampshire students know that that is really not always the case. But if you don't feel like something is your passion, trust that it's not. If you don't feel like you're in a good place where you can grow and develop, trust that it's not. Particularly for those who may or may not be interested in the law or in similar fields, there is a path that is put out as the path. But understand that your path is your path, and it's just as valid, it's just as important, and it's just as necessary for you to learn the skills that you will get on your path to get you to where you ultimately would like to be professionally. You know, my path is, on paper, looks very traditional, but it really wasn't. I left roles when people said, oh, you're leaving this job too soon and you haven't been in that role long enough. And I said, but it wasn't the right place for me to be at that point in time. And so I left. And, you know, I look back now 20 years later and say, you know, I made all the right choices, and hindsight makes it look like I was clairvoyant. I was scared to death. You know, I took a job and it was the job, graduating out of law school, and 18 months in, I was like, I love what I'm doing, but this is not the right place for me to do it. And so I left, and everyone said it was a career killer, but you know what? It didn't kill my career. So trust yourself, you know, by all means, reach out to people and run your ideas and get some guidance, but you know what you need better than anybody else. And always trust that you're not going to steer yourself wrong.
Thanks so much, Wendy. Don't mind me just writing down your words of wisdom as we go here. It's such a great point of advice. Yeah, I'd love to invite Ananda now to share what advice you would give students or your Hampshire student self starting out in your field or more generally in a career.
Yeah, so the nonprofit sector is rough. We're trying to get people paid better, but it doesn't pay great. But I mean, setting aside that, the challenges of the sector that you'd be walking into, I think really importantly, take advantage of your Div 3 if you're still a student or if you're a recent grad, like figuring out, I made my Div 3 be solidly in the nonprofit sector. I was able to work my network, which is another huge one. Like, all of us are your network. We're all Hampshire grads. We support each other here. So a Hampshire alum from like 30 years ago, someone, I think in actually the advancement office, introduced me to an alum who was doing nonprofit consulting and capacity building work. And that one introduction got me in the door at Third Sector New England, a really large nonprofit capacity building firm in Boston. And I did, the first half of my Div 3 was an institutional ethnography of the nonprofit. And so I went in and I interned there while I was writing this ethnography. And that built out my network and kind of got me in the door with this organization and made them take a chance on me as someone with zero work experience. I was relevant. And they ended up hiring me like days after I graduated. So I really thought about how did I, getting the door as a Div 3, like there's a lot of like, oh, I want to learn, so I want to talk to you, not I want a job, so I want to talk to you. It was much easier to get random people to get on the phone with me and have a conversation and then build that relationship to then be able to use to build my career. And I'm still in relationship with the folks that I met way back then when I was first coming out of Hampshire. So really think about how you use all of us as resources. I have Hampshire grads who reach out to me and ask for connections and advice, and like we're all here to support one another in trying to navigate that. And I just know, as someone who does a lot of hiring, how hard it is to hire someone straight out of college because it's such an unknown. So I'd say the part 2 to my advice is get really good at articulating what you love doing in terms of activities. Do you love writing, research? Do you love managing details and planning events? Like, what do you really enjoy doing on a daily basis? Because like that will help you much more than saying, oh, I want X job. If you can talk about and figure out what it is that you actually enjoy doing on the daily, it gives you a lot more openness. Like I'll get on the phone with someone and be like, what do you want to do? And there's such a non-answer that I don't know what to refer them to. I don't know what to recommend. I don't know whether they're actually going to want the job that I'm hiring for, because it's clear that they're so unsure about what they want to do that I can't find that pathway for them to be able to step into roles and be confident that they're actually going to enjoy the work that they're going to do day to day.
Great advice. Using your Div 3 to network and also using the Hampshire Alumni Network. I'm a coach, and a lot of the work we do together is around networking in a cheeky way where it actually feels really good for you and relevant to what you enjoy doing. So yes, 100%. I spent my Div 3 sitting in coffee shops staring at a screen and interacting with only my housemates. So great advice. Miriam, do we have you on the computer now? Hi, Miriam.
Hi.
So I'll just re-ask so that you have the question up front here. What advice would you give students or your Hampshire student self starting out in your field or more generally in a career?
So I would definitely echo what Wendy said about finding your passion and living, your passion and not letting people tell you what you can't do. I think I have years on many of you. So my words of wisdom would be what I just told my 11-year-old son. Like sometimes you got to bite your tongue. And I wish I had told myself that. I really fought the system really hard. And I think as a free thinking person in a traditional field, it wasn't always easy. Like I've definitely found my groove and found what I love to do now. And I'm in a faculty with like-minded people mostly. But I wish that I would have learned to be a little less rebellious, I guess, maybe as a resident. Like it doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help to sort of sometimes say what you think all the time. So I would have told myself to shut up and listen more.
Oof, that's a hard one for Hampshire students and alums. I'm curious if part of that is part of that, Miriam, also managing your own energy and like not wasting your energy on people or things where it's not going to be received or actually change things.
Well, and can actually hurt you. So, I was lucky enough to birth a child who has a personality a lot like mine. And he's awesome. He's an awesome kid, but he's rebellious and he talks back and he doesn't listen to authority. And I think all great traits. Like it's okay to have those traits. Less so when you want to learn from a surgeon that you're kind of mad at. And like, because they're not going to teach you, they don't have to waste their time on you. And, you know, I spoke what I thought. You know, I told Noah this. I said, you know, I said to this surgeon, you know, it's humiliation is not a substitute for education. Like in front of like a room of people, which is not something you should say as your resident, especially to somebody who's going to train you and can teach you surgically. He had things to teach me, and it wasn't helpful to fight with him. And I learned that lesson very late in life. It was hard and struggle, but I guess that was the first thing that came to mind.
Yeah, got it. Thanks so much for sharing.
Can I piggyback on that?
Yeah, go for it, Wendy.
That does not mean don't feel the way you feel.
Yeah.
Because you are going to feel it as a Hampshire student. You're going to be like, this is ridiculous. I think the bar exam is an exercise in malpractice and it's ridiculous and nobody should have to take it. But you still need the license to practice law. So feel it, but moderate when you say it.
Thanks, Wendy. Thanks for that addition of, yes, it is totally valid to feel it. And there are times when it's important to be a rebel and be punk rock about expressing what's coming up, and fight the system or the organization or the person, but knowing when that's going to actually succeed and when you're probably not going to take down the bar exam. So, yeah, you've tried. Amazing. Okay. And to Grusha, so what advice would you give students or your Hampshire student self starting out in your field or more generally in a career? And I know you're in your doctoral program right now, so that's a super important perspective too, in the academic world.
Yeah, I think it is to take breaks and like take care of yourself. I think especially at Hampshire, there is this sense of, you know, everyone's like passionate and working all the time towards, you know, achieving whatever you want to achieve. And I think it's important, but it's also like, at least for me, like, you know, it's very easy to burn out if you're on all the time and if you're always trying to be passionate and also perfectionist, right? So I think in my div 3, I'm like, oh, this is like my one chance to do like all these things. I'm going to like run this extremely big study or whatever. But then it's not. I think like sometimes it's okay to like let go and not do things as perfectly as they need to be done, because otherwise you will like burn out. And so I think finding ways to like take breaks, but also like letting go of, and finding like, you know, if you can't do it in this project, like it's okay, let it like finish it to some degree and then move on and try to accomplish that again in the next project, right? Because there's a way in which if you really care about something and you're trying to be passionate and you want it to be the best thing ever because it's so close to heart, it's not going to get out anywhere. And it's like sometimes more important to finish something that you've started and then address it later in iterations instead of trying to get it right the first time. Yeah. So yeah, take breaks and try to let go of perfectionism if possible, or be mindful of it.
Yeah. Oh, that is great advice. So important. And I think you're totally spot on, especially when you're passionate about something and it feels meaningful in the world. It's so easy to work really, really, really hard beyond your energy and capacity and burnout. And perfectionism is definitely something that's so easy not to even be aware of. So I love that you brought those points up, Grusha. Thank you so much. And thanks everyone. I definitely took notes from what each of you shared. This is such an incredible group and you have such powerful insights. So I hope everyone else is taking notes with me. And I want to be kind and not take up all the space with me talking. And I would love to get some questions from folks on the call. I know we have some questions coming in here. And just as a note, I would also love to talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So if that comes up in the questions, we'll go there. But I'm going to bring in one that's come in so far. Let's see. think there's a question directly for you, Wendy, about the legal profession and your choice to pursue corporate law. I think that might be good to touch on in your breakout room. So if you're put into a room with someone else, whoever asked that, feel free to request to Melissa that you get dropped in with Wendy, so that you can go deeper there. There's a question about advice and pep talks for career change. I'm getting ready for a career change in my mid-40s, applying to grad school and hoping to teach community college/undergrad after being a self-employed artist. We don't have a name there, but I would love to just throw that out if anyone has gone through a career change and would be comfortable sharing about that and sharing any advice or pep talks. I know, Wendy, you kind of started to touch on that, so I might pass it to you if that's okay.
Sure. So, in what is probably a very Hampshire-esque story, when I left Hampshire, I wanted to travel and I didn't have any money because nobody has any money when they first get out of undergrad. So I took a job with the airlines and got to travel and took a lot of crap in the meantime, but had some great layovers at some great places. And so I felt it was a pretty fair trade-off. But probably 3 or 4 years in, I realized it wasn't what I wanted to do. And there's the inertia of, well, it's not what I want to do, but I know how to do it. And I'm not making a lot of money, but I'm at least taking care of myself. I'm paying my student loans. You know, I'm doing those things that we classify as adulting. But if it's not your passion and it's not what you want to do, just make a plan. If you know that you want to go back to school, what are the steps that you need to do what you want to do, and work backwards and build your plan out? I mean, it's not wholly different than planning a Div 2. You know where you want to end up. What are the things that you need to do so that when you get to the end line, you are able to successfully make that transition? You know, is it taking the GRE, although those tests and things are starting to go, by the wayside? Is it, moving to a different location and establishing residency so that you can attend a program at an in-state tuition rate? Whatever it is, just take the steps you get. The hardest thing to do is to start, and you have to give yourself that kick in the pants, but it's never too late. And you, by being a successful student at Hampshire, have all of the necessary skills to do it. You just have to figure out when and get yourself started.
Thanks so much, Wendy. Yeah, the starting is the hard part. And I loved hearing your story too. Has anyone else had a big career change and would be comfortable talking about that?
Really speak to it from the perspective of someone who's seen a lot of from the hiring perspective, is seeing a lot of people trying to do career changes. And I know that this is more specific to the nonprofit sector. Obviously, there's some really specialized fields where having a degree matters a lot. But in my world, it doesn't really matter a lot. And I tend to really advise people against grad school. So I tend to, again, coming back around to networking, as unpleasant as I find that term itself, when it's good, it's that building relationship piece, right? So if you want X job, go reach out to a couple of people who have that job in a learning stance, right? Hey, can we talk, because I'm interested in having a similar career path as you, and I'd love to get your advice on what I need to learn now in order to have your job, and it's going to vary so heavily depending on the job. And I'm going to bet you that oftentimes folks aren't going to talk about grad school as the skills they needed to build in order to have their job. And so really consider what will be most useful to learn in order to have that kind of shift, and how to talk about it. I think there's a real missed opportunity for people to use cover letters as a way to frame the why. I'll get these applications that are just very strange and out of the blue, a totally different sector. And if there's a cover letter accompanying that explained why they want to work at my nonprofit, it would be a compelling case, but it's often not the case that folks tell that story of why they're making that transition and help make a case for someone to take a chance on someone from a very different background.
That's great advice. Thanks so much, Ananda.
Can I add
Yeah.
something, Julia?
Yes, Grusha,
Sorry,
go
this
ahead.
it's not at all about a career change because I've not had it, but I guess it's just about, so just 2 points about like applying to grad school in your mid 40s. Again, I'm not in my mid 40s, but my mom actually just started grad school the same time that I did, and she was in her mid 40s too. And it was very interesting seeing like what the experiences was, and I actually think in some ways it's better to do grad school when you're older because you take yourself less seriously, or you have like priorities set. Right? It's very easy to get sucked into like many things, whereas if you have like other aspects of life that are important, or if you've learned how to prioritize things, it's easier to get through grad school sometimes, or at least that was how it was like looking at my mom. And so that is one thing that I would say, if you do want to go to grad school, you're probably in a better place maybe than someone who's like going through their like 20s just trying to figure out things about life.
I would just say, from a practical standpoint, like beware of crippling debt. It's real. And really limit what you want to do. So I echo what Amanda says. Look around. Is there another way around getting to where you want without, not having any income and like obtaining the debts of grad school? It's hard to dig your way out. And I it just looks to me like it's just getting worse and worse. And like young people that I see going into medicine in particular now, it just makes me like deeply concerned.
Yeah, thanks for that, Miriam. It's a good point of caution, a necessary point of caution. Yeah, and
may I join in? I haven't joined
yes,
in yet.
go ahead, Sara.
Hi, I'm Sara Ranney, and I finished at Hampshire, I think in 91. I think I started in 86. And I've had one major career change 20 years ago. I'm moving into a second one, and it's just a wonderful period. And I'm really thinking about how Hampshire prepared me for having different phases, different range of activities and engagements, communication skills, enrolling those faculty members to be on the projects, the div, what do we call them? Div 1 exams, and the Div 2 and the Div 3. Like that's money. That's money for later on. You get yourself intellectually organized, focused, and come up with a scope of activities, some benchmarks, and some milestones that you're going to accomplish. That's what you're doing when you're in any of those Hampshire processes. You can replicate that out later on. And I just want to share a couple of things. I mean, one is when I was 30, I guess about 31, I wanted to come into instead of being in project-based work, which was my skill set, I wanted to get a career that would have some more, security is not the word, but I wanted to have some more of a path, because basically everything I did, I jumped in new. I could learn well, and I did really well in it, but then I'd start on my next project, and I was in media. I was not in nonprofit, such as you were talking about, Ananda, but I was in media in large part. So it was starting again and again and again and again. And so I made a list of criteria for myself of what I was committed to. And I'm using this again now, 20 years later, and it's paying off in spades. But like, what am I committed to? Like, what am I about? Who am I? What is my passion? Wasn't my language, but what do I care about? And what I kept finding was 20 something years ago was being of service in the community. And I didn't know what expression would be the most compelling for me. And other criteria that I determined for myself was I love working in tight groups of people on projects that have some urgency. I did that in the movie business. I did that in other things. Another thing was ongoing training and development, not doing the same thing maybe again and again, but in increasing proficiency. And I added things at that point in my early 30s of wanting to be in an environment where there was opportunity for advancement. So then the next part of my process was to take a page from a seminar program I had been involved with. Now it's just to take some humility and say, I may not have the best view of myself for myself. And the idea was you would interview people. What do you think would be good for me? Given these criteria, what might you suggest? But me giving some specificity as to what I wanted to accomplish. And I went and spoke to people who knew me a long time, and then some people who knew me very well, but shorter periods. And the range of suggestions was profound. It was everything from public interest law out to, a university professor to what I am now, which is I am a professional firefighter. I run an engine company. We have a goal in this country of having, get this, 3% of firefighters be female. I'm one of them. And I've had a pretty, I've had just an incredibly demanding career in a very demanding system, which may, from the Hampshire viewpoint, look really conventional. Like, you're joining an organization that probably isn't going to shift, change, and develop while you're there. But I think how you be within any context is really, really critical. So I've had this phenomenal training and development over the last 20 years with just a profound opportunity to be of service and make a difference for people. And I couldn't be more grateful. So I guess maybe I'd encourage Hampshire students to also look at those careers which may look conventional. I mean, firefighter for a female is not conventional, but working in public safety for a municipal department, how more conventional can you get than that? And this career sings for me. And it's spilled over into, I went back to school, did an executive MBA program. I've been appointed by the governor of the state to work on workers' comp policy because I'm really active in that. There's no question those diversity of things have also been grounded by the Hampshire education. But just wanted to say that. I'm really appreciative of where I started, and Hampshire was a good foundation for me.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Sara. And I think one thing that comes up for me as you share that is that through our Hampshire education, we have the capabilities to create our own process or approach for navigating transition and what's next in our career and what we want. So I would absolutely encourage folks who are looking ahead to what's, how to start their career or what's next to figure out what works for you. And that might end up being something that you can share with others too. So thanks so much, Sara. And Ashley had a question here. This will be our last one. And I know there are so many great questions in the Easy Retro too. So I'll share those, or we will share those with our panelists after. And if you have time and energy to respond to the ones that are relevant for you, I think it would be awesome if we could share these back out too. So yeah, I want to ask, or Ashley, you're very welcome to jump in and ask your question. What would you prefer?
I'm happy to ask it.
Yeah, please.
So I am a first-year student, and I'm a non-traditional student, and I've come back to school after graduating from high school 12 years ago. So I'm wondering if there are any people on the panel who were non-traditional students, especially if anybody was an older student, and how did that benefit you? And also, what were your struggles?
Thanks, Ashley. Is anyone?
So I wasn't non-traditional at Hampshire, but I was out of school for 8 years before I went to law school. And it was like being sent, that dream you have that you didn't finish a class in high school and you've got to go back to high school as an adult and you've got to figure out who do I sit with at lunch and, all of the mechanisms of being a student, all of that applied. But I think what I had that my classmates didn't have to the same degree was a sense of purpose. Because when you go back to school after 5 years, after 8 years, after 12 years, you are going to school with intention, not expectation. and you are able to drill down and focus on what it is you want to accomplish. When I arrived at Hampshire, I wanted to be an actress, and my entire world, my entire first year was all Rhonda Blair and Ellie Duncan. And then I realized I was really not good at projection, which for an actress is not particularly a useful skill. And so I had to figure out what I wanted to do, but I took this amazing class on Black women writers and started coming into my own understanding, which led to me doing work in terms of identity development for young Black women. And so you come in with a sense of purpose, and that's wonderful, but stay a little bit open, because what you think you might want on day one might look very different from when you walk out the door in year 4.
Thanks so much for that, Wendy. I think we have time for one more response. If anyone else was a non-traditional student or have a relevant experience from our panel, like Wendy's, about a non-traditional educational experience and any guidance you might have.
This is Sara again. So I went back when I was 48 to do an executive MBA program while working full-time as a firefighter. And let me tell you, those are two worlds that are very distinct. I think own that it's your choice to be there. Be proud of yourself for being there. Perhaps I got pretty clear on what the expectations were of me as a student the second time around, so that I was just not, I was clear on the structure of the program that I attended. I was clear on the requirements. Someone told me, I asked a number of graduates, what do you think the most important thing is? One said, don't get behind. And I was just focused. I was focused. Like, let the chaff of I'm in school and it's new and novelty and all that social kind of stuff, I think I let that come off the second time around when I went to grad school. And I just focused on, I'm here to train and develop myself. I'm here to give myself this incredible gift of being in school again, and get to all of your professors as much as possible. It's a great joy as an older student to get in and have relationships with your professors, and they love it. And we on Zoom now, but what's the difference? Enjoy it. Just enjoy yourself.
Thanks, Sara. And Ashley, yeah, feel free to reach out also. I'll talk a little bit later about, I'm going to forget the name, the Hampshire Network platform. I'll talk more about that in a bit, but that's a great place too to connect with alums who were untraditional students. So thanks so much for the question. And thanks everyone who asked questions. Like I said, we'll share those with the panelists for follow-ups after this conversation. But we're now going to do some deep dives. Oh yeah, Hampshire Network. Thanks, Karen. HampshireNetwork.com. Okay, I'll have an actual challenge for everyone at the end related to Hampshire Network. But for now, we're going to have 15 minutes together in breakout rooms. So everyone will be with one person from this conversation. Some people will be with me, so our panelists and myself. And if it's not the person you wanted to talk to, you'll just be dropped in there automatically. I know there were a couple of very specific requests to talk to Wendy. Or if that's the case with anyone else, feel free to message Melissa and make that request. None of us will have hard feelings, or I can only speak for myself. So other panelists, I'm sorry if there are hard feelings, but everyone is incredible. So we're just so happy to talk to you. So we'll have 15 minutes together, and I want to invite us to come back to that question from the beginning. What is your greatest career fear? And I want to add to that, and your biggest hope for your career. So as we go into the rooms, I'm going to invite you to do like truly a Twitter introduction. Like, I'm Julia, I'm a leadership coach, I'm in Brooklyn. Like, leave it there, really, genuinely, really, really quick. And then go for it, have that conversation about those career fears and your biggest hopes for your career. And we're all Hampshire affiliated. So we do, as it's come up in this conversation, we like to break the rules. So as long as everyone in the group is comfortable with it, if you want to just throw that out the window and just have a conversation or ask more questions to the person you're in the room with, definitely just go for it. But you'll have 15 minutes, and please be really thoughtful about how much space you take up versus others in the room with you. I hope that was a great conversation and you got to meet some other folks on the call. If you are interested in doing this or able to access the chat, it would be so great if you could share just some kind of feedback, but also thoughts with us. And I love using this tool called I Like, I Wish, I Wonder. So for example, I liked meeting the other audience members. I wish we had more time to ask questions. And I wonder what a multi-part series on this topic could look like. So if you have I Like, I Wish, I Wonders that you can share in the chat, please go ahead and do that as we wrap up. Here, I'll put that in there too. I like, I wish, I wonder. So go for it. And then, you know, as we wrap up and as you're sharing your I Like, I Wish, I Wonders, I would love to encourage everyone to sign up for Hampshire Connect if you haven't done so already. And I think we've got the link in the chat already, but Karen or Melissa, if you could share that again, so it's just right there at the end. Hampshire Network, there we go. Thanks, Karen. HampshireNetwork.com. If you're not already signed up there, it's a really great platform. I joined in about 30 seconds and just fed my LinkedIn profile into the platform. And yeah, you have faculty, staff, alums, and students in there. And I want to challenge everyone who's here today to share a post in the main feed in which you share one ask and one offer. So I really want to challenge the idea that those of us who are alums have more insights than students, and that we also don't need as much help. So for everyone, I really want to emphasize that you can share something, whether it's a skill or insight or feedback, and everyone has the ability to get some help as well on different topics. So I really want to encourage all of you to share an ask and an offer in the Hampshire Network platform. And yeah, as we sign off, I don't want to speak for the other panelists, but I'm so happy to speak with anyone who's joined today or any Hampshire students or alums. So I'll leave my email in the chat. It's just hello@juliafirestone.com. And any of us who are able to stick around, happy to have some more conversations. But I really want to thank Hampshire for organizing this conversation. I want to thank all of our panelists for joining us and sharing your own experiences. And I want to thank all of you for your questions, for your presence, for your own insights, and for joining us today. Thank you.